Six was a desperate plot-obsessed weirdo who was chosen as Earth's warrior to conquer a new planet. However, when he realized the planet was full of kinky alien baddies hotter than Earth girls, he decided to offer his life to fight in their war and get unlimited clapping access in return.
You want to see what's going on under Miss Grimm's skirt?
It all started one evening when Combat Agent 6 was called to a meeting with Astaroth and Belil, where he was informed that he'd be chosen as a spy to scout the next planet the corporation wants to conquer. As he complained, they made him understand that his role as a combat agent is to fight for them or risk being fired along with the other useless fodders. They then headed into a building where Lilith, a genius and the company's third leader, showed them her invention, which was a lowly named Alice, a high-tech android created to provide Six with support. After Lilith handed him a device which could deliver any weapons he requested via teleportation, Astaroth gave him two orders, which was to construct a base by placing a teleporter that makes it possible to go to and from Earth, and the second was to investigate the area once he lands there. After, Astaroth shoved him in the transport pod with Alice, and as soon as Lilith activated the teleportation device, it sent the two of them flying through the air of a different planet. As they fell, Six asked Alice to transform into a jetpack to save them, but the piece of junk claimed the only function she had was a self-destruct mode. She then gave him the parachute the doofus forgot about, and with it, they managed to land safely in a desert which was so dry that Six started yapping about how he already wanted to ditch the mission. Alice completely ignored his whining and injected him with some nanomachines that were meant to boost his immune system and protect him from unknown illnesses. As they walked to the nearest town, Six realized he only had 300 evil points, which was barely enough to pay for the weapons they'll need to conquer the planet. Alice knew that Kisaragi employees were implanted with chips in their brains, which gave them points based on evil acts they performed. She wondered why Six didn't have any gear on him, so he confessed to spending them all on cultured magazines. As they talked, a pack of monsters suddenly showed up and began chasing them, so they ran to a lower portion of the land where Six started sniping them one by one until an even bigger monster started grappling with him. As he struggled with the monster, Alice was watching the cinematic experience as she trolled him for the disgraceful display. She waited for him to beg her before she ordered a shotgun using his evil points, which she used to destroy the monster. Just then, some knights on horses approached them and were speaking a strange language that Six couldn't understand at first until Alice started sending translations directly into his brain. Seeing that they probably looked suspicious, Alice made up a dumb backstory of how Six was a former general who had amnesia and went on about how their belongings were stolen by bandits. Luckily for them, she was also pretty dumb because she bought their story and introduced herself as Snow, the commander of the region's royal guards. She also noticed the dead monsters they slayed, so she offered to hire them as soldiers under her command. With her help, they easily infiltrated the city and were soon presented to the nation's princess named Tilly's. As soon as Six saw her, his degenerate thoughts turned his brain to pudding while Snow watched in horror. She explained to Tilly's how they slayed so many monsters, which made her beg them to fight for their nation against the demons as they lacked capable fighters. She claimed the demons were after their land because a huge beast called the Sand King was rapidly turning their country into desert each year. Tilly's added that her nation was losing the war and begged Six to join their side. After the meeting, Snow took them to the outside where they saw a legend-class artifact that could make rain fall. She explained that only the royal family could operate it by saying a prayer once every year. However, it suddenly stopped working. Texas Alice was intrigued by the device, so she asked for permission to fix it. It only took her a few seconds to reboot it, and when it requested a new passcode, Six inputted a sus passcode so that the royal family would have to embarrass themselves in order to activate it, hence giving him a ton of evil points. Unfortunately, Tilly's happened to overhear their conversation, so they had them tied up and brought to the throne room where the king was informed of Six's stupid act. Before the king could order their unaliving, Tilly's offered to hire their services, claiming that their foreign knowledge could be of use to them. Later that evening, Snow informed Six that he was now an honorable knight of the Kingdom of Grace who would lead one of their interceptor groups, and revealed that she was going to serve as his unit's executive officer and personal assistant. Several days later, the Knights of the Kingdom were sparring with each other, when Alice pointed out that they were mostly old men and younger women, so Snow revealed that their kingdom lost most of their young men during the fight against demons. Snow asked if Alice really intended to join Six's unit, and she replied that she was capable of doing anything as a high-spec android that she was, adding that she could even play the role of a strategist and medic. Snow gave them the resumes of all the soldiers, and out of all the old hags on the roster, Alice and Six decided to select 2 people who they found interesting. One of them was Rose, who did a JoJo pose as she introduced herself as the artificial combat chimera, and Six matched her energy by doing a silly pose of his own. From her resume, Six learned that she could absorb the powers of whatever she eats, and she confirmed that it was true, but said that it had to be a lot of meat. She also said that eating a demon beast would grant her its unique powers, and told him how she'd been eating strange beasts such as fire-spitting lizards and one-horned beasts, which turned her into a crappy attempt at a boss monster. Snow called out the other pick, which was a crippled girl named Grim, who immediately started asking Six about his love life and offering herself up to be a girlfriend to him. Six played along by advertising himself as a better version of Dwayne Johnson, as well as being single himself. He brought up the information on her resume which said that she was a wizard, and she claimed that she wasn't really a wizard because she was only taking power from something called the Great Zenareth to perform miracles on his behalf. Six asked what a Zenareth was, so she revealed that it was the god of undeath and disaster, making him believe that it was an evil deity. She suddenly started acting sus as she invited him to check how narrow the road of her dungeon was, but Six didn't even let her finish her speech before lifting her barrier to reveal a black door, which made her embarrassed. Snow tried to take charge of the team, but Six reminded her that he was in charge since she was demoted, and they started bickering until Snow dared him to hit her. Six chose to grab her elite moneymakers instead, which earned him some evil points. However, she was about to cleave him with her sword until Tilly's arrived. When she heard what happened, Tilly's scolded Six before revealing how Snow worked her way up from being an orphan in the slums to being a knight through constant efforts. Later that evening, Alice and Six were in their room when she reminded him not to try anything sus with her. She also observed a lamp working without electricity, which got her curious about their kind of technology. When Six suggested they do something big to get a hideout as a reward, Alice replied that she was glad he hadn't forgotten their mission, but warned him that underestimating them could prove to be deadly. The next morning, Six and the girls watched as the soldiers walked straight into the enemy like morons, and Snow went on about how it was honorable to fight head-on. When she asked what they were doing there, Six revealed that his intention was to crush the enemy's supply units, but she claimed it was a cowardly move because supply units mostly consisted of low-ranking demons which wouldn't give them any glory if they defeated them. When Alice explained how cutting the supply chain would force the demons to retreat, Rose started asking to join the fight, claiming that her grandpa told her she could become the ultimate chimera if she ate more demons. Six and Alice went on to intercept a group of ogres that were transporting some carriages and unalived a bunch of them using their weapons before threatening the rest to scram. At that point, Rose felt they were bullying the weak, so Six told her to take whatever she wanted from the demon's remains while reciting a conqueror speech he learnt from Gladiator to scare the rest of the demons. Rose used her flame breath to barbecue some of the demons, but before she could begin feasting, a high-ranking demon showed up riding a creature called a griffon. She came down to confront Six, but the dumb virgin immediately started taking pictures of her for his late-night arm workout while she introduced herself as Hein, one of the Demon Lord's Elite Four. She told them she'd only let them live if they left the supplies, and Six immediately asked for them to call it a day since Hein seemed too powerful for them, but Alice called him a spineless moron. When Hein invited him to work for the Demon Lord, adding that be allowed to make any woman he wants into his personal baby maker, Six immediately folded, but Alice knocked him back to senses with a kick. Six ended up rejecting her offer and challenged Hein to a battle, so she blasted him with her blue flames. He dodged the attack and told her she was cooked because she was outnumbered, but when he asked Snow to attack her, she gave a stupid excuse, claiming that her flame sword was the wrong element to face her. Rose also backed out of the fight because she didn't want to burn any of the stuff they wanted to take home, and Alice and Grim proved to be worthless as well. Six dodged more of Hein's attacks while avoiding the Griffon's attacks as well, and Alice finally decided to help out by shooting down the Griffon with her shotgun. Just when they started to feel confident, another huge demon showed up and instantly made his presence felt by scoring a home run with Grim's skull, which made everyone think she was a goner. The new demon introduced himself as Gaddlecand, one of the Demon King's Elite Four, before the girls started spamming attacks on him. Six was frozen solid by the sight of Grim's bloodied body, so Alice made him realize she was already a goner, but this got him enraged and ready to exact revenge for her. He told Alice to warp their weapon into a buzzsaw so he could rip him apart, and gave the other girls some orders as they went to face the demon directly. Unfortunately, Gadalkan's subordinate came by to call him for a more serious issue, causing him to fly off before Six could have his cool main character rage moment. Six decided that they should have a funeral for Grimm, but Snow revealed that Grimm couldn't die from a little attack like that one. She explained how Rose was treated badly for having demon blood in her, and how Grimm was also maltreated for having the ability to come back to life, no matter how many times she's unalived. Afterwards, they took Grimm to the temple where they gave Zenarith an offering so he would bring her back. The rest of the girls left, but Six decided to stay at the temple overnight, and when Grimm finally revived, he rizzed her up, causing her to invite him on a date. The two of them ended up riding around town on a turbo wheelchair which the Kisaragi company made, ruining the romantic moment of every couple they came by until they encountered a police officer who tried to stop them. After unsuccessfully trying to use a dizzy spell to take out the cop, Grimm had to explain that her curse grants her power in exchange for her inability to wear shoes. The next day, the king was having a meeting with the Knights of the Kingdom of Grace where they informed him that the demons withdrew their army during the night. They tried to figure out why they did that until Six showed up and decided to aura farm by revealing that he was the one responsible. An ugly old fart who was the army strategist started bad-mouthing Six, saying his army was nothing but women and people with low blood. But that only helped Six brag about the fact that they managed to set fire to the Demon Lord's supply trains. Another old knight asked how it was necessary to do that, so Six explained that the Demon King's army would be toast without food and water, no matter how powerful they were, and proceeded to make the old strategies grovel before him. The king then mentioned something about a chosen one who the legends of the kingdom said would save them, and Tilly's added that a crest would appear in the hands of the chosen one, granting him power to ultimately defeat the Demon Lord. Six pulled out his gloves to reveal a spot on his hand and claimed that he was the chosen one, but Tilly's killed his enthusiasm by revealing that what was on his hand was a deadly insect whose poison kills instantly. He wondered why he wasn't dead and realized that it was because of the nanomachines which Alice injected in him, so he started claiming to be the chosen one again. Unfortunately, Tilly's informed him that the crest had already appeared on the hand of her older brother, who was the prince of the kingdom. Hours later, Six met up with Alice, who was trying to force Rose to eat a grasshopper which she said would grant her immortality, but Rose didn't want to eat bugs, so Six held her in place while Alice continued bullying her. Afterwards, Six asked Rose why she was letting the army boss her around despite how powerful she was, and she replied that it was to learn who she was. Years ago, she was found in a certain ruin surrounded by artifacts and didn't have any memories of anything other than the old man who made her. The old man was researching a certain stone called the Stone of Miracles that could do anything, but he died after attempting forbidden magic, so Rose wanted to obey his last words and make his dreams come true. Rose revealed that the army promised to share the research they'd done on the ruins if she helps them, and hearing this, Six and Alice decided to hire her as an apprentice agent as a way of using her for themselves. That evening, Six was in his room with Alice when he started crashing out because none of the girls in the fantasy world had been rizzed up by him so far. Alice got tired of his pathetic whining, so she decided to bribe him with a squeeze of her robotic plots, but this further triggered the virgin in him until Snow interrupted them with an invitation to a meeting. During the meeting, the general revealed that the demons at the top of a place called the Duster Tower, who were named Rista of Knowledge and Gil of Power, had defeated the party of the Chosen One. He stated that the injuries of the Chosen One weren't injured, but they were running out of time, and added that the demons which Six and company pushed back could return and maybe destroy them before the Chosen One could defeat the Demon Lord. He also revealed that the Chosen One said there was a treasure in the Duster Tower capable of defeating the Demon Lord, but there was no time to wait for his recovery, which meant that the knights were going to attack Duster Tower and get it for themselves. The strategist asked if he had a plan to get them to the treasure, so he showed them the layout of the tower, which had a spiral staircase inside of it, and said they needed to attack en masse, going up little at a time. He asked the strategist if he had any good strategies, but the slick doofus shifted the question to Six, so Six nonchalantly suggested that they burn the tower to the ground. Snow said it was impossible because the tower was made of stone, but Six clarified that they could take the first floor and then set a campfire in the middle of it, which would smoke all the enemies alive. The general rejected the plan and decided to go with his original plan of attacking in numbers the next morning. But when it was time for the raid, Six decided that his team would sit out and wait till evening while the knights went on with their pointless battle. Snow started yapping about how they needed to join the fight so they could gain recognition after defeating the demons at the top of the tower. But Six said he was too scared to face those bosses directly, so he'd wait till evening when Grim woke up and come up with a new plan. Snow called him a coward and decided to go in alone, but she came back exhausted later that evening to the sight of Grim having sus dreams about them. Following Six's plan, they used a nail gun to fix some nails on the tower walls, which allowed them to climb the tower from the outside until they got to a point where Snow fell off due to exhaustion. Six caught her and decided to piggyback her, which ended up giving him the moment he craved as her marvelous melons were pressing on his back. Eventually, they got to the top of the tower where Rista and Gil were gloating like idiots until Six dropkicked Rista off the top floor. Rista held on to the railings of the tower, so Alice suggested they throw rocks at him until he eventually falls off, but Gil said he wouldn't let them hurt his brother. Six told all the girls to pick up rocks which they would throw at Rista if Gil attacked them, and proceeded to throw rocks of his own at Gil. By the time Rista made it back up to the top, Gil was out cold. But before he could complain, Six reminded him that his brother was still alive before blackmailing him by taking the treasure in exchange for Gil's unconscious body. Later that evening, Snow met up with Six in his room to give him a bag of coins which she said was his pay for the mission. He asked how much the gold was worth, and she revealed that it was enough to make an entire family live in luxury for a year. So Six told Alice that he'd quit being a spy, so he could stay there forever instead. Several days later, the general met up with Snow and Six and informed them that the treasure which their unit found during the tower raid had opened a path for the heroes' party into the Demon Lord's castle. But their squad ended up getting attacked by Hein. The general appointed them to handle the demon leaders, starting with the Elite Four, and Snow was excited about it because it would bring them a lot of money and recognition. However, Six was skeptical about it because he'd realized that it was all part of the doofus strategist's schemes to embarrass him. Hours later, Six and his army were gathered in the fields when Snow pulled an Optimus Prime speech. Alice told Six her plan, which involved them running away after pretending to fight if they ran into Hein because her shotgun was still under repairs, so Six relayed the information to the crew. However, Snow started crashing out since she longed for glory, and Six had to explain that he wasn't willing to put his life on the line because of that sneaky strategist's plans. Unfortunately, Hein showed up with a battalion of demon soldiers as well as a huge rock monster. As Snow revealed that the rock monster was a magic golem, Six's army commanders ran off to face different factions of demons, leaving Hein to him and the girls. The battle went even more off the rails as Snow went off to face Hein on her own so she could try out the new ice sword she bought. Rose decided to face off against the Griffin so she could snack on it, and Alice took on the responsibility of waking up Grim, which left Six alone to face the golem. Rose climbed on the Griffin's back and started biting its head, while Snow and Hein were having a good old power fantasy face-off. Six tried to blast the golem with bullets, but it was weaker than your lines on an OF baddie, so he asked Alice to hurry up with Grim. Alice revealed that Grim had passed out completely, and when the golem reached their location, she asked Six to buy time while she ordered some plastic explosives from their headquarters. Six tried to punch the golem, but realized that he was no All Might when his arm started hurting badly. He followed up with a kick, but that also didn't leave a dent on the golem as it tried to swat him like a fly. He managed to hold up its arms and asked why the transfer was taking longer than usual, so Alice revealed that it was tea time at their HQ. Out of desperation, Six decided to release his limiters, and the system warned him that a 1-minute limit break would mean a cool-down period of a whole 3 minutes, but he still demanded for it, so it activated the limit release. The stripes on Six's suit glowed blue as he gained enough super strength to lift the entire golem, allowing Alice to plant the newly arrived explosives on its body. Six flung the golem in the air, and it exploded into rocky bits which woke Grim up by hitting her in the face. Six told the girls to protect him since he was immobilized for 3 minutes and Hein came by, so he tried to stall for time by talking to her. Like a typical dumb virgin, the first question he asked was the kind of food she ate to grow out her milk factories, and this infuriated her so much that she blasted some flames at him, which ended up getting knocked down by Rose. Hein said Snow was a disappointment, And truly, she was because she ran around the battlefield while crying about how Hein had melted her new ice blade. 6 quietly informed her that he couldn't move, but she stupidly yelled it out loud in response, allowing Hein to pick up on their predicament and decide to finish them off with one big flame attack. Hein charged up a massive fireball, but before she could fire it, Grimm surprisingly came in clutch by immobilizing her using a curse right before 6's cooldown period ended and he could move again. He complimented Grimm for being useful for once and marched towards Hein to pummel her, but she swayed him by promising to pay him 3 times what he was earning at the Kingdom of Grace. When she could move again, she brought up all the different kinds of sus creatures that existed in the demon world which could make 6's Gunnar dreams come true, and he was about to join her side before Snow jumped in and attempted to slice her head off. Hein dodged but realized that Snow's slash had now allowed them to take a precious jewelry that was on her body, which Grimm revealed was a powerful magic catalyst named Magicite. 6 asked what would happen to Hein without it, and Grimm revealed that she wouldn't be able to use enough power to be one of the Elite Four, so they realized that they had her beat. 6 took the opportunity to rack up evil points by taking millions of Onlifin's pictures of Hein while the surrounding demons watched in shock.
Emotional damage!
Rose felt bad for her, so she suggested they give her back the Magicite, but 6 refused and instead decided to troll Hein by placing the Magicite on his Excalibur, which forced her to retreat out of embarrassment. Later that evening, the gang celebrated while feasting on some food and beer, and Snow started acting sassy as she refused to acknowledge 6 as her commander, so he accused her of being a tsundere who was madly in love with him. After their party, Snow dropped 6 off in his room and started walking away while claiming that she'd one day unalive 6. Unfortunately, the strategist just happened to be in the area, and he overheard her little murmur about ending 6, so he gave her a task which was to prove that 6 was a spy in exchange for a spot in the Royal Guards. He gave her a special pay bonus, which would stand as an excuse for her to go see 6. But on her way to his room, she remembered all the time they spent together and decided to abandon the strategist's offer. When she got to 6's door, she saw him talking about how he needed to get back to his spy mission, which was to get a hideout as a reward for their efforts, and she was so stunned that she dropped the bag of coins before asking him what he meant by spy. 6 tried to give a goofy answer as usual, but Snow wasn't having any of his nonsense as she asked in a serious tone for him to say who he was. She asked him to leave the kingdom to a place where she'd never see him again, which was the least she could do because of how he's protected the country. Hours later, Snow was training her squad, and she thought about how the strategist put her back on the Royal Guard along with Rose and Grimm, thinking it was because of her that 6 had left. Grimm and Rose showed up to inform her that there were strange movements among the Demon Lord's army which suggested that they may attack in the next few days. Snow had a flashback of 6 and Alice during the earlier drama and realized that she didn't even hear him out. Meanwhile, 6 and Alice arrived at an inn where she suggested they finish up their last mission, which was to set up their teleporter and connect it to Earth. Alice said they'd send in their agents to invade the nation as soon as the setup was ready, and 6 replied that the Demon Lord is going to be no match for the power of Kisaragi. 6 said the mission was going to be easy, but he started feeling down when he remembered Snow and the girls and tried to play it cool by acting like he was fed up with that world. Alice said she'd get the process started by putting together the teleporter, but revealed that it would take a month for the phase space to stabilize before telling him to go and have fun somewhere. She brought up how the Demon Lord's army was up to something and said the Chosen One had pinned down one of the Elite Four, which implied that the Demon Lord's army was taking advantage of his absence at home by planning a large attack in their kingdom. 6 started celebrating like a weasel, so Alice revealed that Snow sent him away quietly as a reward for saving her, since spies get unalived when caught in most countries. Later that night, 6 stacked up aura points by doing sus dance moves in front of random ladies until he met a particular lady who was even wilder than he was as she tried to bait him into raiding her dungeon. 6 kept trying to gain evil points from her until Snow showed up and scolded him for being a creep. When she asked what he was doing, he said he was preparing to attack the Demon Lord's army, which made her argue with him out of disbelief in his words. Rose separated them and asked 6 why he quit the military, which made him surprised that Snow didn't snitch on him. He lied that he left because Snow used to force him into doing weird dance moves with her, so she scolded him as she walked away. 6 started trolling her by roleplaying how desperately she needed help against the upcoming Demon King army attack, causing them to argue when she said she didn't need his help. The next day, 6 was doing some shopping in the market when people started spreading crazy rumors about him, and he saw wanted posters on the walls which called him Zipperman. When he got back to the room, Alice teased him a bit by calling him Zipperman before checking the evil point meter on his wrist and complimenting his hard work. She said they'd save 200 evil points for their trump card and use the rest on mines. Her plan was to plant some landmines in the Demon Lord army's attack path in order to delay them, and they spent all night fixing the mines in the area. When they got back into town, they noticed that the people were crying, so they asked the storekeeper what happened, and the storekeeper replied that the Chosen One had gone missing. When they got back to their room, Alice told him some information she discovered which revealed that the Chosen One almost had one of the Elite Four named Faultless beat, but the enemy used a spell called Random Teleport which sent both of them somewhere unknown. 6 said he felt bad for the Chosen One because he'd be in the same boat if the teleportation device didn't work properly. Alice brought up the fact that the tale which said that the Chosen One was fated to defeat the Demon Lord had been accurate so far, and 6 replied that it was impossible for the hero to just leave the stage halfway through the story. Alice asked 6 how Chosen One stories usually went in novels and movies, so 6 replied that he loses to a tough enemy, trains to get stronger, and then gets revenge later on. Alice brought up the fact that the Chosen One had already been defeated once by the bosses at Duster Tower, which normally meant that he'd train to get stronger and end up getting revenge. 6 realized that the Chosen One's legend went off the rails because he took the tower, so he asked Alice if there was anything they could do. Alice suggested that they send chemical and biological weapons that were normally banned, but 6 immediately refused that idea, so she came up with a second one, which was to go alone into the Demon Lord's castle, self-destruct, and take everything out. 6 refused again, so she brought up how cooked the nation was without the Chosen One, which gave them an idea that they both were on board with, which was to run away. When they were packing, Tilly's came by with some guards, and 6 didn't even try to hear them out before saying no to them. She asked if he recognized their parachute, and he stupidly confirmed her suspicions by calling out the name of the device, so she accused them of being spies from another country. 6 tried to deny it, but when she suggested torturing them, he immediately groveled as he confessed to being a spy. She laughed in a manner that revealed that she was only toying with him and switched gears by asking him for a request. She asked him to watch the final stand of the knights during the clash with the Demon Lord's army the next day and tell the people of his hometown about the Kingdom of Grace so that they can prepare for the Demon Lord's army as well. A while later, 6 and Alice were rethinking their plans of running away on a balcony when they were joined by Snow and the girls. Snow informed them that herself, Grim, and Rose were stationed to be at the main gate as the kingdom's last line of defense, and 6 advised them to run away if things got dangerous. Snow refused by saying she'd rather be unalived than run away, but the 2 goofs she was stationed with were more than ready to run to ditch them if given the opportunity. As 6 started laughing at them, Snow started bickering with him again, which made Rose realize that they were always fighting because they liked each other. The following day, Hein arrived at the kingdom with a large group of demons, and she was having a chat with Gaddlecand when their stone golem suddenly collapsed on the ground. She ordered her army to stop their march, but they still got floored anyway. Hein sensed a weird magic power, which ended up being her magicite crystal, and she went down to pick it up. At the same time, Tilly's was about to give 6 and Alice a display of her magic when some smoke suddenly appeared in the distance, which made 6 gain some evil points. A while later, Hein finally arrived at the city with her demons, and she looked like she'd just been through a sparring session with Bakugo. The demons and the knights started squaring off in the city, and Snow was watching from a high ground where she asked Grim to stop the golem using her curse. Grim replied that her powers would reach their peak in an hour's time before revealing that she'd taken the rings from every couple in the city by telling them that she needed to make sacrifices to her god. Hein, who was the one leading the golems, asked to face 6, but Grim decided to face her instead. Grim used a curse that made the golem trip on its feet, and Hein tried to retaliate with a flame attack, but Rose knocked it away easily. Grim tried to use an even more powerful curse to seal away Hein's magic power, but it didn't work because she didn't have enough courage, so she decided to troll her for having cow-sized melons instead. Gaddlecand decided to join the party, and Rose welcomed him with a kick, only to get yeeted into the wall nearby. When he tried to unalive Snow, Rose saved her by blasting him with a flaming breath attack, causing Gattlecan to shift his focus back to her. He overwhelmed Rose with heavy swings with his weapon, but she managed to dodge his attacks and gave a heroic speech about how she'd continue fighting despite her fear because of what her grandfather used to tell her. Gattlecan tried to finish her off with a heavy strike, but Snow deflected his attack before requesting to face off against him while trembling in fear. Grimm stopped her and offered to face off against him alongside Rose in order to give her a chance to go check on Six. Grimm and Rose started firing combo attacks at Gattlecan, which gave Snow a chance to run away. Meanwhile, Six tried to run away with Tilly's, but she refused while telling him to go preach about the Kingdom of Grace. Six told her to do it herself and added that even if the kingdom dies, her being alive meant that they won before offering to extend the royal bloodline with her. They ran downstairs where they met Snow, who informed them that Hein, Gattlecan, and Six golems were running wild in the city, and Six replied that they needed to escape as fast as possible. Snow revealed that Rose and Grimm were the ones holding back the enemy and stated that they wouldn't last much longer before begging him to help them. She offered to give him whatever he wanted in exchange for his help, but Alice advised him not to take her offer and instead use his remaining evil points to help their escape. Six said he couldn't do anything because he was only a civilian, which was her fault, and he started walking away before Snow grabbed him by the arm. She burst into tears as she expressed how useless she felt on the battlefield and called him commander as she begged him to save Rose and Grimm. Six decided to stay behind and help them, and Alice started chewing him out for being a spineless villain, but he told her to shut up and order an anti-material rifle. Snow asked what they were doing in that spot, so he revealed that the plan was to snipe them since there was no time to run back to the gate. Alice said they didn't have enough points and scolded Six for wasting the points they'd gathered on cultured books. Because it was an emergency, she told Six to gain some evil points by punching the king in the face, but Sho and Tilly's stopped him. Snow asked him to play with her calcium cannons instead, and the scene became tense as everyone watched in anticipation. Six realized that doing what she asked would be consensual and hence not give him any evil points, so he pulled off the ultimate shocker by dragging down her white knights instead, which earned him a ton of evil points. Meanwhile, the city was turning into a bloody mess and Rose struggled to get a bite of Gattlecan until a huge blast took down the stone golem which Hein was standing on. Several other blasts took down a few other golem and Hein instantly realized that it was the work of Six. Alice guided Six as he blasted the remaining golems in the area, and it didn't take long before the demon army came flying towards them. Hein and Gattlecan landed in the castle along with several other demons, and when Six failed to nail an attack on Gattlecan, the demon called out the fact that the gun had limited shots left. Gattlecan planned to attack at once with Hein, and Snow offered to take on the regular demons, while Six and Alice took on the Elite Four members. Six told Alice to order his buzzsaw and blasted away several demons that tried attacking him using the gun before one of them pinned him down. Snow saved him by slashing the demon's head off, and eventually Alice succeeded in handing him the buzzsaw. Using it, he ripped apart several demons, and Aura farmed in front of the demons by claiming that he'd used this ultimate technique to unalive a whole lot of heroes. Six released his limiters and proceeded to rip Gattlecan into 1,000,000 pieces in the blink of an eye before wrecking the rest of the demons using a spinner attack, leaving Hein too stunned to move. Snow asked him to rip Hein apart as well, but he instead chose to call a 1-month truce with her, which she agreed to as she flew away with her demons. Snow asked if the 1-month truce was a good idea, and Six replied that it was plenty of time because he had an idea. When Tilly's and Alice left the room, Snow rewarded him for his efforts by kissing him and telling him that she'd take her time to figure him out. Unfortunately, Six couldn't read a room to save his life, so he started yapping some nonsense about her body again, which made her so ticked off that she pulled her sword on him, and his cool-down phase ended just in time to allow him run away from her vicious attacks. Afterwards, Six and Alice met up with Tilly's, who thanked them for their efforts before asking Six to be a knight again. Six replied that he was done with that knight stuff because he was tired of taking care of his weird henchmen. Suddenly, the girls appeared and started begging him to stay before Snow arrived as well and asked if he was going home. When confirmed that he intended to, she suggested he became a mercenary, and he smiled while pitching the new catchphrase for his hitman agency. Hours later, Six met up with the strategist and pulled off his hair with a special torture tape as punishment for trying to screw him over. On their way out of the city, Alice pointed out that Six now had a negative 190 evil points and reminded him that he'd get punished if he returned to the real world with those numbers. Six asked what they could do, and she replied that they needed to stay in that world even after they got the ability to go home, meaning that they'd only go home when their points went back up to positive. When she said she'd be staying with him in their world, Six hugged her and she told him to find a way to earn back his points, causing him to run into town to cause some chaos. Some days later, Six was on video call with Astaroth crashing out about the teleportation device she sent him, which had a success rate of less than half. She tried to calm him down by offering him the new volume of a Konosuba rip-off manga, but he said the only way for her to make it up to him was to marry him. She asked what he meant by his previous report, which said that he couldn't come home yet, and he explained that he couldn't leave his cute subordinates to go home since he was the boss around there. He asked for the reinforcements he was promised, but she said they didn't have any to spare because the heroes had launched a large-scale counterattack which was affecting their plans of world domination. Belial and Lilith were fighting on the front lines as well, but things were looking bad for them as well. Astaroth said they wanted him to come home, but he immediately declined the offer by telling them to leave that world to him. She told him to start focusing on invasion, so he started crashing out again while asking how he could do so without support, and eventually started torturing her by flaunting his overgrown bamboo in her face. Sometime later, a humanoid tiger named Tiger Man, who also worked for the Kisaragi company, showed up and challenged Six to a sword fight, but all it took was a single swing to destroy Six's weapon. It didn't take long before the real owner of the weapon, Snow, showed up demanding the return of her weapons, and Six deceived her by making up a dumb story about how the sword broke during a battle against Madara, causing her to cry in mourning. Seeing this, Tigerman gave her his weapon, and this somehow made her completely get rizzed up by him. Just then, the bells started ringing, which indicated that there was an enemy attack in the city, so Six told Tigerman to watch over the castle as he rushed to the scene with Snow and Alice. Later that evening, Six was celebrating their successful mission with the girls when he noticed that some girls in the bar were fawning over him. He started to feel like a Rizz king, but he snapped back to reality when some brats started calling him Zipperman through the window. After he chased them off, he asked Snow why she was still in their unit despite the fact that she was a royal guard again, and she revealed that it was because the princess asked her to watch him personally. He asked Alice why she came to the bar with them despite the fact that she didn't eat, and she said it was because she was compiling a report to send to Kisaragi HQ. When he asked what she was researching, she said it was the possibility that the crops in that land are poisonous to Earthlings, and revealed that the meat he was eating was actually orc meat, which made him feel like hurling. Alice asked for Show's help in a special investigation the next day, which was to look into a weird snake meat which they had on their table. When they arrived at the forest, they observed the snake creature battling some other creatures, which gave Alice the data she needed. On their way out, they saw one of the snake creatures hanging from a tree surrounded by the eggs of a creature known as headsplitters, and Six tried to warn them that it could be dangerous, but the girls approached the tree anyway. Suddenly, they started hearing weird animal noises, which Alice identified as noises which the creatures were sending to their comrades. All of a sudden, an axe came flying by, which startled Six so much that he ran to a different part of the forest where he encountered a strange crab monster. He noticed that it was injured and became friends with it by speaking its language. However, when he tried to shake its hand, Snow showed up from nowhere and sliced it in half. Later that evening, the girls were feasting on some more meaty dishes when Rose brought up the fact that Grimm had previously summoned some undead creatures during a goofy ritual she did in their absence. Alice asked what kind of undead she summoned, and she revealed that she summoned a ghost, which made Alice yap for minutes about how ghosts existing in that world felt awkward. This made her get in a little argument with Grimm when she claimed that there was no such thing as Xenareth, and she went even further to say that Grimm's immortality was due to the fact that she was a weird creature and not because of a deity that was reviving her. Grimm decided to prove it firsthand, and Alice stayed determined to crush whatever beliefs she had using the power of science. They went to a secluded spot where Grimm tried to sacrifice a rabbit but lost her nerve, so she asked Six to help her out. When Six refused, Alice offered to do it, but Grimm decided to preserve the bunny's life by using some already cooked meat instead. She placed the meat at the center of the magic circle and chanted some words that made the magic circle glow. It ended up summoning a very jiggly spirit who claimed that she hadn't been in the mortal world for ages. Six was initially happy to see this spirit mommy in full glory, but when he found out that Grimm didn't have the faintest clue of what she'd summoned, they started brainstorming ways to send her back. The ancient spirit asked them to make a wish, claiming that she'd grant any desires they had, and Six wasted no time before wishing for a harem. The spirit was about to make him trade his soul for it until Alice interrupted them by calling her a cheap hologram. The spirit introduced herself as a great devil who served the Lord Zenrith, but before she could drop her name, Alice made her wobble around by tossing the magic mat around. Alice asked the spirit where her real body was and called her a con artist, which angered the spirit so much that it tried to stop her heart with a magic blast. Unfortunately, her attack did nothing because Android didn't have hearts, so she decided to prove herself by making any wish of theirs come true. Alice wished for her to make 2 habitable planets, and the spirit started freaking out, so she told her to eliminate the Demon Lord and all the demons around. The spirit crashed out again and asked her to wish for something more normal, so Alice told her to unclog their toilet at home. This ticked the spirit off so much that it transformed into a monstrous form, and she ended up scaring it away by demanding that it cleaned up their toilet. Several days later, Tilly's tried to activate the rain device using the sus password which Six set, but it didn't work, so she presumed that it was because she needed an audience. Six came by, and she informed him that ever since their rain artifact broke, their nation hadn't had enough water, implying that they'd been importing water stones from the kingdom next to them named Taurus, but stated that they stopped importing once the artifact was fixed. When it was time to use it, the king didn't want to say the prayer, so he vanished. Tilly said she was sending Snow to Taurus as a messenger, while they searched for her father and asked Six to escort her on this venture. Six suggested she says it, but she went on with her briefing as she told him the Crown Prince of Taurus was a simp who would no doubt try to rizz up Snow. She said she wanted him to protect Snow in case anything bad happens and catch the Crown Prince in the act before explaining that trying to seduce a messenger was an international incident that could be used as leverage to make their negotiations go smoother. Six called what she was asking him to do blackmail, so she offered to give him some information which Alice previously sought in exchange for his services. When he asked what the information was, she revealed that it was info on all the various ruins throughout the continent, and also told him that there was an unexamined ruin in Taurus. Hours later, Alice was driving the gang around in a car, and the girls were having more fun than they've ever had until a swarm of demons started chasing them from behind. When Alice tried to swerve the vehicle to avoid the demons, Grimm fell off, so they turned back to get her. When they arrived at Taurus, a butler named Harmel told them that the Crown Prince Angel had prepared a feast for them, but that wasn't enough for Snow, who started bribing him into giving them a ton of water stones as she walked off with him. When they arrived at the palace, they dressed up in some fancy clothes and went to a party where the girls immediately started showing off their goofy personalities. Grimm was trying to rizz up Harmel, while Rose was stuffing her face with every meaty dish she could get her hands on. However, the real problem was Snow, who made a show by announcing her plans to become the queen of their kingdom by getting together with Angel so she could be rich for life. Alice suggested they tell Snow the prince was probably a guy as ugly as a One-Piece villain, but Six said he'd prefer to watch her dreams get shattered firsthand when she meets him face to face. When Angel showed up, Snow immediately tried to rizz him up despite his DJ called-like appearance, and this made the villain duo realize that Snow was so far gone that she could seduce an orc for money. Angel put a wrench in Snow's romance moves by bringing up the fact that she came to talk about water stones, and when she tried to deny it, he claimed that he couldn't try anything sus with her because he knew it would cause an international incident. Meanwhile, Grimm was showcasing her own madness by crashing out after finding out that Harmel had a fiancé, and she tried to curse him, but it backfired and splashed her with water instead. Several minutes later, Alice and Six arrived at a room, which had a strange glowing chamber which they assumed had some sort of creature being nurtured inside of it. They were interrupted when a weird boy named Russell showed up and introduced himself as one of the Demon King's Elite Four. Six interrupted his aura farming session by grabbing him in the face, and Hein just happened to walk into the room at that moment, causing Six to pounce on her. He asked Alice to get out some handcuffs, and when she handed them to him, he cuffed Hein up and used her as a hostage to prevent Russell from attacking them. He told Russell to watch as he began to play with her in sus ways, while Alice sang praises to him for being a diabolical scumbag. Russell told him to let Hein go, claiming that it was cowardly to take hostages, but Six reminded him that the demons use tactics like that all the time. Six took things to the next level by grabbing Hein's milk cushions until she started begging for mercy. Suddenly, he marched towards Angel and accused him of selling the water stones to demons as a way of forming an alliance with them. Angel explained that it was more of a non-violence pact than an alliance and claimed that his kingdom didn't intend to go into battle against the Kingdom of Grace. Snow brought up the fact that demons wage war on humanity because of the Sand King, which was turning their land into desert, and claimed the demons were just pretending to want peace. She also threatened him by claiming that his country could be branded as a traitor when other countries are banding together to face the demons. Hein interrupted her by saying that the demons were willing to call off the war if the humans were, and this made the two ladies argue for a bit before Hein revealed that the demons were now capable of handling the Sand King thanks to Prince Angel. She went further to say that the ancient ruins in Taurus contained something that could defeat him, and Angel added that there would be no need to fight anymore when the Sand King is gone. Hein said the demons weren't going to let them have the water stones and asked Angel who his real allies were between the demons and the Kingdom of Grace. In order to make him choose their side, Snow started rubbing the prince's hand on her melons as she pleaded with him that they were the good guys. However, Hein matched her energy by getting lovey-dovey with the prince as well, causing the two ladies to start bickering. Six felt jealous about the fact that his harem event was happening to someone else, and Angel switched gears by saying they couldn't handle diplomatic matters through immature fights like that. The ladies got more aggressive with their seductions, but that didn't have any effect on Angel at all, or at least it seemed that way, until he gave Six a devious wink which crushed his spirit. Six said he was about to do something wild and asked Alice to watch over him, so she agreed to support him. Six met up with Angel and embarrassed him by placing his raw meat on his head, which earned him some evil points in the process. The next day, Tilly's informed Six and Snow that because of their actions, Taurus had officially declared war on the Kingdom of Grace and that they demanded the two of them be handed over to their custody to prevent a full-blown bloodbath. Tilly's told Snow that she was removing her from the position of Commander of Knights, causing her to cry over her re-demotion. Tilly's asked how they could get some water, and Snow suggested Tilly's say the magic words, but she instead chose to send them on a mission to find a water artifact in the Sand King's territory. When they arrived at the middle of the desert, Snow gathered a lot of the water buds that they sent them to get, and she was excited about the fact that she was going to get her job back. Six found it hard to believe that the tiny buds contained water, so Grimm explained that they were compressed using magic, causing Alice to start another science versus magic debate between them. Just then, the area started vibrating, so they got in the car and moved as fast as they could until they saw a large mole appear from the ground, which they identified as the Sand King. Snow realized that the buds they gathered were part of the Sand King's body, meaning they were the organs that allowed the Sand King to store water in its body. Suddenly, the Sand King started chasing after them, so Alice told everyone to jump out of the car when she gave her signal. To avoid the Sand King's wrath, they leapt out of the vehicle, abandoning the carriage of water buds that they'd gathered inside as it exploded. Six managed to preserve one of the water buds, but Snow still felt depressed because it was nowhere near enough, and he raised an even bigger issue by asking how they were going to get home. Six and the girls walked under the blazing sun of the Texan desert for hours, and they got to a point where Alice suggested using some points to get a tent so they wouldn't die under the heat. Grimm's stomach growled as she told Six she needed some food, and Snow said the only way for them to survive was to eat any beast they ran into during their journey. Six agreed to this idea, but when they prepared some orc, he started crashing out as he refused to eat the meat and they had to force feed him. Later that night, the gang were in the tent and Alice randomly suggested that Six should yank down Snow's white warriors. The girls started debating his sanity, so Six reminded them that he gained points from doing evil deeds. Snow still debated and even pitched that he did it to Rose instead, but Rose disagreed with the idea. Alice pointed out that Grimm was right there and unconscious, so Six wasted no time to reveal her Black Knights, which gave him some evil points. By the fourth day, the sun became so intense that they only traveled at night, meaning they didn't run into any magic beasts, which left them without food. On the sixth day, Six realized that all his efforts to gain points from an unconscious Grimm were no longer working, including his attempts to gain negative points, so he swore to gain a ton of evil points by doing sus things to Astaroth when he got back. On the seventh day, Six tried to gain points by peeping at Snow's plot armors, but it didn't work, so he accused her of enjoying the experience, which made her chase him around with her sword again. They were having their usual walk that evening when Six got a random epiphany about Rose, which he translated to mean that she wanted some bumpy action with him. Six knew that gaining points from Rose would be crossing a line, so he decided to do something much wilder than anything he's ever done before to Rose. The two of them had a face-off later on where he said he needed to take off all her armors and she took a stance with her sword while telling him to bring it on. He tried to convince her to let him have his way with her by promising to get her a rare item that could allow her to pay the loan for the sword. Alice asked why Snow was being so resistant to Six despite the fact that she was fawning over an ugly scumbag angel a few days ago, and she replied that she was blinded by his wealth. Snow tried to slash Six with her sword, but ended up collapsing, and Alice motivated him to take his chance while she was still partially conscious. Six replied that he couldn't because he considered it as crossing a line, and all of a sudden, Rose started making moves on him. He hesitated at first, but ended up playing along, and he took Alice outside so there would be no witnesses. Six and Rose did a bit more romantic yapping until Alice stopped their momentum by asking what they actually wanted to do to each other. Six thought she wanted to play with his controller, but she revealed that actually wanted to eat him, causing him to run away from her until she had him pinned down. Rose started acting like an absolute psycho, so Alice left alone in the room to have a battle, and this ended up giving Six enough evil points to order another ride for them. When they returned to the kingdom, Tilly's informed Six and Alice that the unified forces of the demons and Taurus would be attacking them soon, and she gave them a mission which was to stop Hein and Russell from getting their hands on an ancient weapon, which was said to be able to defeat the Sand King, which they were more than happy to accept. Some days later, Astaroth and the other employees at Kisaragi Company were celebrating their survival of the heroes' counterattack, and she wondered if they were taking things a bit too easy. Belial said that night was a reward for all the hard work their crew put in, but Astaroth said it felt weird because Six and his crew were fighting while they were relaxing. Belial said it was okay because the employees were working hard so that the leaders could have fun, and then she started playing around with her melons while Lilith recorded, gaining some evil points in the process. Meanwhile, Six arrived back in his room where Alice and Tiger Man were chilling, and he whined about how he nearly died in the desert because Astaroth prevented him from gaining negative evil points. They suddenly got mail from Lilith, which was a special live show which she said no employee should miss. Six felt unmotivated, but when the video started, Six rushed to the screen when he saw that it was Astaroth and Belial playing around in their swimsuits. At the same time, the employees of Kisaragi were staring at the results of a survey they did, which was to choose who was their ideal boss, and Lilith revealed to the other two bosses that it was Six's idea. She started telling them about some other weird villains that took a liking to him while using her bots to get the most juicy shots of their bodies, and Six, who watched through his computer, felt jealous about the fact that they were having fun without him. Alice revealed that Lilith was doing that broadcast in order to get more votes on the survey, and the video eventually told the viewers to subscribe if they wanted more. Six was used to using cultured sites like this, so he didn't waste time to subscribe, only to end up seeing pathetic attempts by Lilith to look hot in video form. Astaroth and Belial were talking about betting over which of them would end up winning, so Lilith confidently declared that she would end up being the victor while Aura farming. The duo weren't impressed by her confidence, though, because they knew she bought votes, and Astaroth pointed out the fact that Belial was currently leading the charts because the employees liked her. Belial comforted Astaroth by saying that some employees would definitely appreciate her as well, given the fact that she was always thinking about what was best for them, and Astaroth said she didn't really care either way. However, when Lilith asked if they wanted to know who Six voted for, she instantly flared up in embarrassment, and Six felt proud of how Lilith was teasing them. Lilith motivated Astaroth to say her mind by pointing out that it was just the three of them in that area. So Astaroth confessed that she cared who Six voted for, and went on to talk about how the two of them had been close since the day he joined the corporation. After raining compliments to him, she started to talk about how much she wanted to be his milk mommy, not knowing that everyone including Six could hear her, and afterwards, She went to a high ground to give a bold villain speech, but ended up seeing herself being watched by every employee on their phones. She instantly dismantled Lilith in retaliation before drowning in shame, and Belial told Lilith to do something about Astaroth's current sour mood. So she put Six on video call and asked him to speak to Astaroth. Six said with a disgusting expression on his face that he'd recorded the broadcast and planned to watch it every day while stretching his man parts in the bathroom, and this made her so embarrassed that she jumped into the pool to cool off. Belial brought Astaroth out of the pool and took her to the results of the survey, thinking that her passionate display would have won the hearts of the people, but they ended up seeing that Lilith was the one on top. Belial immediately started throwing accusations at Lilith, causing them to argue a bit before Astaroth pointed out that Lilith's vote count exceeded the number of agents they had at their company. This proved that Lilith did some good all-internet malpractice, so Belial punished her by scorching her alive before asking the authorities to remove her fake votes. Afterwards, Astaroth and Six started talking on video call about how Six always used to bully people into voting for her, and she said she never really wanted to be number one but thanked him for his help. Suddenly, they noticed that Lilith's votes had skyrocketed back to first place with an even more insane vote count, and when Belial interrogated her, she revealed that she had a backup plan which didn't involve cheating. Astaroth asked if she was sure she didn't cheat, given the fact that her numbers went over their employee count, and Lilith confessed that she hired more employees for the purpose of that survey, which made Belial say she was an even bigger idiot than Six. Astaroth asked how she intended to pay them, and Lilith said she wouldn't because they were an evil corporation. They said they were going to punish her for her actions, and then she started whining about how it was hard for a washboard like her to get votes over the jiggly duo of Astaroth and Belial the normal way, which was why she had to use underhanded tactics. She started to gain evil points by toying around with their plots until they punished her by beating her up with their powers. Afterwards, Astaroth privately asked Six who he voted for, but before he could respond, the alarm started blaring, which indicated that some heroes had invaded their base. They wondered how they found them, so Alice pointed out that it was because of Alice's dumb idea to stream them to the world. Belial said some words of motivation to the villains as they sprung into action against the invading heroes, and Astaroth gave Six a new set of orders, which was to not lose against the Demon Lord's army. After she ended the call, Alice revealed that she had a plan to defeat the Demon Lord's army and told Six to sleep since they were going to get started early. When he left, she told Tiger Man that she was the one who requested they ban him from gaining negative points because she wanted to gain a favor from him when she asked them to lift the ban. The next morning, Tiger Man offered to join them in exploring the ruins, but Alice said it was best for them to split their forces since the unified forces of the Demon Lord's army and Taurus were already invading the kingdom. She showed them a spot on the map where she said the knights would handle the warriors from Taurus, and told Tiger Man to hold back the Demon Lord's army. Six said Tiger Man couldn't handle an entire demon army on his own, but she pointed out that the battlefield was structured like a jungle which had enough ambush spots for Tiger Man to be able to clutch some W's. She added that while the Knights and Tiger Man hold off the enemy, she and Six would head back to Taurus in order to threaten them into submission using the ancient weapon, and the boys clapped in response to her brilliantly evil plan. Hours later, the main team were riding in a car, and Rose asked Alice why they were heading back to Taurus immediately after the declaration of war, to which she replied that it was the best time to go there because their only opponents would be the Demon Lord's leaders who were already there. Snow started crying over the fact that she was receiving a pay cut, so Six started bragging about how rich he was until Alice revealed that she was the one giving him an allowance. She offered to give Snow an allowance as well as a bonus if they completed the mission without any hitches, so Snow got re-energized as she swore that she'd do her best. Six asked Alice if they could hire Snow to be part of Kisaragi given how greedy she was, but Alice replied that she was more of a gold-digging scum than a villain, so she wouldn't make a good fit. When they arrived at Taurus, they were watching some demons camp outside the gate when Hein and Russell walked out of the building and talked about some weird enemies they defeated who kept coming back. Hein told Russell to get some rest since he used all his magic, but Russell argued that he didn't need to because combat chimeras had infinite magic power, which meant that he could use water magic all day so long as he didn't run out of food. Hein told him to eat up since tomorrow was their big day, and he left while telling her to stop treating her like a brat. Six wondered what to do, and Grimm said it was best for them to go inside while it was still night so they could make the most out of her amazing powers. Snow brought up the fact that the demons would never guess that they'd return to Taurus so soon and proposed they attack the demons in the middle of the night instead of exploring the ruins. Six said he could never do something so lame, and Snow said she was confused because she made that plan in an attempt to copy Six in his devious ways. However, Six suggested they rest for the night and follow them into the ruins the next day, allowing them to fight the traps and trigger the traps, which would leave them exhausted and vulnerable when they finally reached the goal. He said they'd hit them when they felt relaxed and claimed he'd never waste that wonderful chance on a night attack, so Alive complimented him for finally acting like a devious villain. As planned, Six and his team tailed the demon generals as they went to the ruins, which looked like something out of a sci-fi movie, and Snow couldn't help but try to gather some scraps which they ran into so she could sell them off on eBay. Hein and Russ destroyed all the robots which attacked them while Six and his gang watched from a safe distance, and eventually they got stopped when some traps got triggered in the area. Russell noticed that Hein injured herself while trying to protect her, so he started healing her injury with magic, while Hein told him that she was the only one who could help them drive away the Sand King. When the two of them moved along, Six asked Grimm to curse them so they'd get into trouble after losing their ability to use magic, and she replied that she'd have to speak in a loud voice to make it happen, which would expose them. Russell and Hein arrived at the room which they said was the goal, and they stood outside the chamber which was housing the weapon that could take down the Sand King. Hein pointed out that the weapon was huge, so Russell explained that the weapon was initially used to wipe out monkeys that were breeding on the surface. Russell said they'd use the weapon to wipe out humans after using it on the Sand King, and Hein asked why Russell hated humans so much. Russell said he hated humans because it was the wish of the one who created him, and made Hein remember how much she hated humans as well by bringing up the weird things that Six did to her. When Russell opened up the weapon chamber, Six took him out with a kick to the family jewels while the rest of the girls surrounded Hein. After figuring out their plan, Hein started whining about how unfair it was that they benefited from their hard work until Alice pointed out that Russell wasn't breathing. Minutes later, Alice gave Russell a shot of medicine that woke him up, and when he asked what happened to him, Six said he took him out with a low blow, and also revealed that he was waiting for him to revive so they could take over the weapon. Six pushed Russell to a wall while asking him to open up the chamber and tell them all about how the machine works. Russell activated the machine but suddenly went inside of it, and the machine broke out of the chamber to reveal its Gundam-like form. Six held Hein hostage again to protect himself, but Russell didn't mind as he drove the device around, while claiming that he'd use it to wipe out the Sand King as well as humans. Hein started giving a villain speech as she teleported away, and Six tried to stop her from leaving, but only managed to steal her plot armor, which embarrassed her while giving him some evil points. Six threw Hein's piece as a distraction, which allowed them to escape from Russell and his device, and they ran outside where they saw that Russell was already waiting for them. Six told them to run back inside, but Russell started using his giant robot to destroy the building while claiming that he'd annihilate all of them. Inside the building, the team started brainstorming for a plan to defeat Russell, and Grimm tried to place a curse on Alice, but ended up getting knocked out by the ceiling instead. Rose suggested she negotiate with Russell since they were both chimeras and maybe find out something about where she came from in the process, so Six agreed. However, he noticed that she was trembling in fear, so he told her to stay inside the building and watch Grimm while he heads out to face Russell himself. This made them argue for a bit before Six asked Alice if she had any bright ideas for them. Alice said she had an idea, but stated that it had 3 risks associated with it. In regards to the first 2 risks, she asked Six if he was willing to go into negative evil points, and he was surprised because he thought he'd lost the ability to do that. She revealed that she asked for a ban on negative points except in the case of an emergency because she knew he'd never stop going into it if she didn't. He brought up the incident at the desert, which was a clear emergency, but Alice said she didn't activate the negative points because she believed in his survival skills. He asked her to tell him that last risk, so she revealed that the last risk was the fact that he'd have to fight the monster alone in order to buy time, and handed him the book and pen which she normally used to order stuff from the company. Six assured her that he'd take care of the monster and rushed out of the building to do just that while the rest of the girls rushed back to the room where the robot was staying. Alice said she needed heavy equipment to build something which would help them face Russell, and told them to help her do it faster, because the more time they wasted, the more Six's life was at risk. Russell told the surrounding demons to go into the building in pursuit of the girls, but Six took them out before landing a kick on the robot, which didn't budge it at all. Russell said there was no way a human could beat his machine, and Six said he only needed to make it spend all of its energy. However, Russell revealed that the machine ran on the life energy of the pilot, meaning that a chimera like himself could go for a crazy amount of time. Six avoided several attempts of Russell to stomp him, and stopped him from going after the girls by throwing a flash grenade which temporarily blinded Russell, which gave him an opening to summon a whole army's worth of weapons to that area. Six spent the next couple of hours trying to blow Russell's Gundam to bits with all the weapons he had, but none of it worked, and Russell realized that he was only stalling to let Alice cook something up. Russell decided to chase after the girls instead, but Six jumped him from behind and slashed her robot's leg with his buzzsaw, causing it to stumble. Six tried to run away, but Russell positioned the fall in a way that the robot landed on him. Russell started crushing him with the robot until Alice showed up in a large spider-like robot which Six identified as a super powerful trump card called a destroyer. After some words of encouragement by Six, Alice charged at Russell's bot, causing a huge explosion that enveloped the area. Several hours later, Six woke up in a hospital bed where Alice told him that she easily clapped Russell and his robot. She added that Snow had captured Russell, and she managed to get the people of Taurus to retreat by threatening to skewer them with the destroyer. Six asked about the rest of the Demon Lord's army, so she revealed that Tiger Man turned them all into chew toys and even took over their land. When he noticed that his bottom half was exposed, he asked if she was playing with his Chunchanmaru while he was asleep, but she said she was only helping him take out his body wastes. She revealed that he was out for 3 days and quelled his insecurities by promising to take care of him even when he becomes an old vegetable. Afterwards, they visited Russell in his jail cell, and Six tried to strike a deal which would have him solve the city's water problem in exchange for freedom, but Russell disagreed, claiming he wouldn't betray the Demon Lord's side. He started acting pompous by claiming that he could resist whatever form of torture they applied to him, so Six let Tiger Man take over the interrogation. Tiger Man broke into the prison and started making sus moves on Russell until he eventually gave up and agreed to make water for the city. The next day, Six was chilling with the girls when Grimm started nagging, so he decided to shut her up by forcing her to wear some socks which Alice ordered. Just then, Grimm started burning up and they tried to evacuate the area, but that didn't stop her from exploding. Back on their base, Astaroth got a report from Six which said that their mission was successful, and she considered going to join them, while Belil was busy training the Chosen One and Faustus, who she recruited to the company. At the same time, Six was chilling with Alice on a cliff where he asked when he'd get to enjoy the life of a harem king, and she replied that he'd get the chance when he conquered every planet under the stars. Six knew there was no chance of him succeeding with that plan, so he decided to conquer the planet they were in and start a harem of his own, which made Alice smile. Comment "crippled plots for the win" if you think Six has the balls to create a harem with Grimm. That's all for today's video. If you like anime recaps like this, check out this video here.